Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're listening to Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
So, on today's episode of Eating W's, it is all about Russell Wilson. Of course, huge news came out today. Earlier today, you guys will be seeing this on Tuesday night. Russell Wilson was traded from the Seattle Seahawks to the Denver Broncos, pending on a physical and Wilson's approval of the trade, but it's likely that those both will come through clean. So it's going to happen. The full deal is Denver gets Russell Wilson and a 4th-round pick, and Seattle gets 2 first-round picks, this year's and next year's, 2 second-round picks, a 5th-round pick this year, Shelby Harris, which is a really good player. I'm kind of surprised Harris
Great
was a part
run
of it.
stopper.
Great run stopper, probably one of Denver's best true defensive linemen. Noah Fant, who's a still developing but young, fast, very versatile tight end. And, of course, Drew Lock to compensate for the quarterback, who, I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see how Seattle uses Drew Lock. That's something that I'm really going to keep an eye on in this
I think they don't say they don't go with a free agent quarterback or a draft. Does the Seahawks now, is Drew Lock the second best quarterback in that division?
Oh, God, so who is it? Jimmy
Stafford?
G? Stafford?
Is it Jimmy G or is it Trey Lance?
Oh, that's
Not
a
to
good
get off
point.
topic,
That's
but
a good
I'm going
point.
saying Trey Lance because all the reports are saying Jimmy G is out. So it's Trey Lance, Kyler Murray, who's also possibly on the outs,
Oh, man.
Matt Stafford, now Drew Lock.
Oh, man.
Maybe this is the perfect scenario for Drew Lock.
It could be, man. He's facing a lot of good defenses in that division, though. I don't know how well that's going to go for him.
He at least gets a chemistry piece with Fant going with. So
That's true. It's going to be... I'm really excited to see how they play Drew Lock there in Seattle. But this is a huge deal. They paid a freaking
that is
king's
a hefty
ransom
price.
for Russell Wilson. I've been saying it for a while that the Broncos are a good QB away from being borderline Super Bowl contenders. Now they, of course, lost some of those other pieces with Fant and especially Harris, who made them those contenders. But they might actually be pretty damn good this year, and that's going to be a scary division there in the AFC
Definitely have the
West.
offensive firepower.
But they have the offensive firepower to do it. They have the receivers, they have the running backs, and now they have the quarterback. And, Seattle, this is a really even trade.
I think so.
I've been looking at it, and I've been trying to decide which team got the better part of it, and I really think it was pretty even. Because Seattle
regains a first-round pick, which they didn't have one this year.
And they'll have 2 next year now. They have 2 seconds. I'm guessing 1 this year, 1 next year, because I'm not sure if the Broncos
I don't know exactly on the terms
two
on
second
that,
round picks.
but
And then I'm guessing a 5th this year. That's a lot of stuff. I mean, you might be getting rid of this really good quarterback, but there was clearly something going on with what Russell Wilson in Seattle that just... It wasn't meshing well. I mean, you could tell the past few years that they had the offensive names, they had the depth chart, but they just didn't have the wins, they didn't have the production. So I think it'll be really good for Russell to go kind of get acclimated in a new spot and see if he can kind of revive his career.
I don't think this was so much on Russ demanding to be traded. I think that they had the discussions about it, and the Seahawks as a franchise need to look at the big picture where they just gave up a lot of capital for Jamal Adams, including having to re-sign him to a huge deal. And that one hasn't worked out so well. I mean, he's been a decent player, but a two first-round pick player, that's the kind of player Russell Wilson is. I mean, yes. So they had to look at the big picture here, and they were able to get a lot of assets back that they previously lost and then some. So, they got a 71-year-old head coach in Pete Carroll. I don't think they're trying to rebuild. I think they're trying to regain these assets and not only look at a possible presence, but the future as well with all these draft picks and the young players they got in return.
Yeah, so looking at the Seattle part of it, kind of because you just were... So now they're in this division that, as you just mentioned a second ago, is very changing. I mean, last year this division produced 3 playoff teams. But I think we could see a very different NFC West next year. Very, very different. You have many uncertainties at quarterback and throughout the division. You got new stuff in Seattle now. And there's a lot of free agent guys that Seattle could still pick up who could really fight for that starting spot. I mean, of course, top of my head, I'm going to mention Gardner Minshew every time. But, you got Gardner Minshew. You got Drew Lock, who's going to go there and compete for a spot. You got a couple of rookies this year. It's not a great quarterback class by any means, but, you got a couple of guys that you could take a chance on in the draft maybe. Now that you got that first-round pick or get a later-round guy and see if you can kind of get an uncovered gem. That's going to be a crazy division next year.
You want to talk about crazy divisions? What about the gauntlet that is now the AFC
That's what I was just
West?
going to say. Flipping it
Holy
over
snap.
to the Broncos side of it, now you look at that AFC West and just look at the quarterbacks of Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, now Russell Wilson, and then Derek Carr. I mean, when you look at a division
Derek
and
Carr's
Derek
probably
Carr
the
is the
fourth
worst
place
quarterback,
and that's not a bad thing.
that is
I still say
mind-blowing.
Derek Carr is a top 10, top 15 quarterback.
And he's the fourth. He's the
And
last
he's the
one in
fourth
that
best
division.
in your division. Oh
And-
man, that's gonna be crazy. I'm glad we played the AFC West last year.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Oh man,
That's
gonna
gonna
be insanity to play that division, and that division has to play itself also. That's gonna be very fun to see because those are gonna be some very, very explosive performances.
It's actually going to be really funny because, we talked about this a little bit last season with the NFC West constantly beating up on each other and then getting to the playoffs and not making it very far. Of course, the Rams broke that and had to go win the Super Bowl. But I feel like now we're going to kind of see that in the AFC West where we see a couple of these teams make it, but then they had to fight so damn hard to make it throughout the entire season that they get to the playoffs kind of beat up and worn out.
I bet this year the AFC West gets the 3 teams in the playoffs.
I could definitely see that
And
for sure.
I could see a fourth one just being on the outside looking in.
You got to imagine it's Chargers, Chiefs, Broncos, but like you just said, I mean, Raiders made it last year. The Raiders are always a wild card to randomly make it to the playoffs. And then not even mentioning they get that 4th-round pick this year back too, which, of course, the 4th-round pick is nothing crazy, but you can get a pretty damn good role player at the 4th-round pick. If you get really lucky, you could uncover a star player at that 4th-round selection. So overall, just what an insane trade.
This is probably one of the biggest trades I've ever seen.
Oh,
I've
definitely.
been watching football, and following it now for I'll give myself 20 years. I can't think of a star quarterback like this, a top 5 quarterback being traded, and it being almost amicably. Like Deshaun Watson's probably going to get traded, but we were all expecting that to happen. I don't think we were really expecting this type of trade.
I very much expected Wilson to stay in Seattle. I was shocked when I saw
I
this.
believe they just came out pretty recently and said that they had no plans to trade him.
Yeah.
Now, there was obviously as this apparently all came together at the combine, but everyone listens. Maybe you didn't plan on trading him, but when the Broncos come to you with we'll give you 2 firsts, 2 seconds, a quarterback to replace them, a chemistry piece and a receiver tight end, and a young nose guard. Whew. I mean, you listen, and you're like, well, let's talk, because are you serious about that? Because that's a lot of pieces.
To be honest, the biggest shocker for me in this trade is the fact that they put Shelby Harris in there because if you look at all the factors like age and skill level and potential, more development, Shelby Harris is probably one of the top DTs in the league.
Definitely.
If you look at all that kind of stuff,
Especially when you're talking about the run stopping defensive tackles.
Yes, exactly.
I remember he was a target of the Packers.
More than anything, I'm surprised
He
that
was
the
a free agent.
Broncos were willing to give that up, especially after just losing Von Miller last year. Their pass rush and defensive front 7 in general are going to look very different this season.
There are reports that Miller is looking to come back to Denver, so
I actually did see those, so that'd be kind of interesting if that happened. But, of course, once we come to the regular season in a few months here, this is really going to shake up the regular season and how the games go. But one thing I want to talk about that it's really shaking up now is kind of the impact this trade is going to have on the current quarterback market, especially heading into free agency. Because now, Rodgers re-signs his deal, which happened, or hasn't happened yet, but is likely going to happen. Wilson is now gone. He's officially with the Broncos. So who does that leave in the market? It's a bad draft class. This is really going to inflate the price of quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, I want to tie it back to the Vikings, but I truly don't think the Vikings are going to get rid of Kirk Cousins. I think we're going to keep Kirk Cousins for this season. Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi, our new GM, have both raved about Cousins and how good and how excited they are to play with him whenever he gets brought up. But, hell, if one of these QB needy teams still, the Steelers, the
Gotta listen
Redskins,
to offers.
if they come up with an offer anywhere even close to this good and are maybe even willing to take his cap hit, all of a sudden as the Vikings, you really got to think about that. And of course, Kirk Cousins is at this point, with all the people have already officially went to a new team or stayed with their current team, Kirk Cousins is probably one of the top QBs left on that conversation of maybe moving, especially as I mentioned a second ago, considering this draft class is not overly good with quarterbacks. But not even just Kirk Cousins, but some of those lower guys, your Gardner Minshew's, even this is going to affect the guys who get drafted and where they get drafted a little bit. It's really going to shake everything up. It's probably even going to kind of boost Jimmy G's value amongst teams. So it's going to be crazy to see. If this is just the start of the off-season free agency period.
Oh, we're not even to free agency.
We're not even to free agency. It's going to be insane, man. I am so excited.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Make sure you all keep watching, keep updated, because it's going to be a fun season. This is why they say
the season never ends. This is the business part of it. This is
the
team building part of it. I mean, no, it's not as exciting for the general fan, but, for the hardcore fans, this is still just as exciting, especially when you get huge days of breaking news like this.
Yep, so huge shakeup in the NFL, so make sure to keep an eye on that. Keep watching tomorrow for an update episode from us, and then Thursday will be the first mock draft episode where we'll be talking about my mock draft. So definitely keep watching here at Eating W's. But until next time, don't forget
to eat that W.